We're going to get started.
Yeah.
So I want just a few things to start with. My name is Nathan. I will be your moderator for this panel. My pronouns are he and him, and I just want to start by acknowledging that this whole conference and each panel is taking place on the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Nation. A couple of housekeeping things. Please try to use the Q&A instead of the chat to ask questions, because I will be dropping helpful links into the chat so that they're easily accessible to everybody. Please try to use that. I will be taking questions throughout, so if you have a question that just pops into your head, don't hesitate, use the Q&A, and I will pass your question on to the panelists. Please remember to visit our vendors room. Our authors have worked hard on their books, and they deserve to make a little money, even though it's kind of, the end of the world. And if you have any questions, I'm sure that we will not cover everything today, but if you want to chat further with everybody, you can go and visit our Discord room. So I will drop a link for that too. All right. So I guess this panel is putting the PR in depression. Oh, Nicole is here. Yay. She's just in time to introduce herself. There she is. All right.
Yay.
Hi, so sorry about that.
No worries.
Welcome.
Technical difficulties, it's the classic. And you're just on time. I was just going to ask everybody to please introduce themselves.
Great.
So we'll start with Avi.
All right. Hi, my name's Avi Silver. I use they, them pronouns. I'm currently based in Toronto, which is on the traditional unceded land of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, Métis, and the Mississaugas, the First Nation Dish with One Spoon territory. So I am a queer non-binary author who writes a lot of fun and not so fun I'm saying fan fiction because I've been writing a lot of fan fiction lately, if we want to talk about right now where my mental health is. But I write fantasy novels. I wrote Two Dark Moons, queer YA fantasy featuring giant lizards, fantasy astrology, and lots of non-binary love. And my novella with Penrose Press, Pluralities Or, is forthcoming in a month that probably starts with a J, because we've had a little bit of mishap with COVID. I am, in terms of identities, I definitely deal with lots of mental health stuff. I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I have CPTSD. And I also have a chronic motor tic disorder. So if you see me moving at all, I'm just getting the demons out. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I run the multimedia storytelling initiative known as the Shale Project, which is an indie publishing venture between me and my partner, Sienna Tristan. So managing a whole indie publishing ordeal while also sometimes having some hard brain days is definitely a party and something I have experience with and would love to talk to you about.
Thank you so much. Catherine, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Fitzsimmons. I am the owner of Brain Lag, a publishing company based in Milton. So I'm not going to attempt to butcher the names of the traditional lands, but same area as Toronto, as Avi. I'm a publisher of sci-fi and fantasy novels and short story collections. My latest book, The Unseen Force, that's more or less it. It's coming out in 2 weeks. I have been fighting with depression off and on since high school, and these days I take medication for anxiety. And yeah, Brain Lag is publishing up to 8 new books this year. We also have another one coming out this summer, next month, an anthology with a bunch of current and upcoming Brain Lag authors. That's called The Light Between Stars. So if you're interested, please check out brain-lag.com, and information on all our books is available there.
Great, I guess that's me.
Yeah, you beat me to it. I was unmuting myself. Please go ahead, Nicole.
Cool. I'm Nicole. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently in New York, so not Toronto, but on the Lenape and the Canarsie tribes. I am the author of Mixed, which is nonfiction about mixed and mixed race families, and Last Dance, which is a short story collection, currently querying agents for an upmarket fiction book about mental health, and also a journalist, and I do some podcast producing for an online magazine called The Nashona. I am a mental and physical health mess, but yeah, yeah. So a lot of my writing is about health, especially mental health.
Awesome. So what would you say is the main impact of mental health struggles on publishing, or vice versa? Like, what's the main impact of publishing on your mental health? Yeah, it's a nice question to start with. Let's start with Nicole, since she was the last to go.
Cool. I think I've been thinking about this question, and I think for me, mental health is so much of the way I deal with mental health is so much just a part of who I am. It's hard to say how it impacts publishing. I can definitely say that publishing impacts my mental health. Going and querying agents is really anxiety provoking, and looking into publishing, and it's not great, but very necessary to what we do. So it is hard to balance that, and that's a very cheerful way to start off this round.
Catherine? Oh, Avi, sorry, did you raise your hand? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just like ready to party, if that's okay. No, I think, like, Nicole, I love how you started, because I think that it's, cheerful, right? Like, it's hard to say. I feel like in a lot of ways when it comes to dealing with, mental health struggles, there's this requirement to be the happy depressive, right? Like, I think people, when I talk about my struggles with depression and anxiety, and then when I say, yeah, a lot of it comes from having CPTSD, it comes from trauma. That's, people sort of, they balk, right? Because it's a hard thing for people to sit with, and it's sometimes a hard thing to share. But I think it's important to recognize it. So I just want to say thank you for starting where you started. Finger guns intensify. But no, in terms of the way those two intersect, I think so many of my struggles with mental health kept me out of publishing for a really long time, because I was so afraid to query anything. I was expecting rejection at every turn because I was self-rejecting everywhere. And my biggest challenge when it comes to dealing with my own brain, whether it be from rejection sensitive dysphoria with ADHD, or my own depression, my own anxiety, it's very easy to go, they won't want it anyway. They won't like me anyway. I'm just going to embarrass myself. I'm not going to do it. And that seems like the first big barrier. But I find that, at least in some of the, especially indie circles that I'm in, I've found, not to turn around and be the happy depressive now, but I found that places that allow you to be candid about your mental health make for incredible work partners. Because so much about indie is about networking and being able to say, this is me, this is where I'm at, this is my goal deadline, this is tier 2 in case something goes down. Especially because, like you had also said, mental and physical health, my tic flares up under times of extreme stress, or when it just decides it's time, and as a result I lose use of my right hand, which makes writing kind of hard. So it's just a matter very much of being here's my reality, what can we work with? And I find it opens up a conversation that's been useful, at least.
Thank you. Catherine?
Yeah, I was, sorry, my train of thought just derailed there, but personally, I think something that it seems all of us can share in terms of dealing with whether it's depression or anxiety or trauma or anything is a lot of us struggle with self-esteem issues. And that and social anxiety, just trying to get yourself out there and to be able to put yourself out there. And, you know, your writing is kind of your soul, and you're bearing that part of yourself when you're publishing something that you've written. And it's very hard to do for, you know, someone who does struggle from self-esteem issues. And that's something that I have had to learn to get over, especially with things like panels like this, readings, you know, meeting people at conventions, talking about my work, that type of thing. And as for publishing affecting my mental health, the other way around, I would say it's probably done so in a positive way. And that's just because I love publishing. I started doing this because I self-published my first novel and I loved it. You know, loved every aspect of it up until the marketing part. That was a little harder. But, you know, I love doing it. And every time I get a submission that just makes me go, I have to publish this. And all the work that goes into it, getting to read it so many times as I edit it, and, you know, finding the right font, finding the right cover, all of that stuff, putting this book together, that's a joy to me. So it's definitely been energizing for me to, you know, to take this on, and I've been doing it for 10 years now.
I'm a huge font geek, so I can really relate on that. All right.
The font is the voice of your book.
So
you have to pick the right font.
Yeah, absolutely. My next question is, do you also manage a day job, and how does that, you know, affect everything else? Let's start with Avi.
In the before times, I had a day job. Not anymore. I've been sort of joking that, no, it's not a joke. I am now enjoying a flourishing career as a full-time author because there isn't really other job stuff right now. But when I had one for a while, I mean, I have had jobs on and off through my life, as most people have. I found managing the two of them to be sort of up and down, right? Because sometimes, you know, depending on the day job, because I've worked in a lot of places, sometimes I would have trouble keeping my head in the game because I would just think I could be writing right now. I could be doing this right now. I could be doing what I want to right now instead of corporate evil. Like, what am I doing? But also because the writing time is so precious to me, writing was my joy, I think. So being able to come back and go, now I'm writing, now I'm marketing this, I'm going to cons. Like in the years where I was working full time, in the before times, I never had a vacation actually off. All of my vacations were for cons. And I think it did a really good job of kind of giving my brain some Pavlovian training to be like, writing good, marketing good. So that even now when I do it, it gives me, I think, a lot of joy. But it definitely, the time balance was hard. I really forgot how to relax as a result, especially during things like NaNoWriMo. Once it was done, I would equate writing with joy. And while writing is joyful and marketing for me is joyful because I'm a goon, it made it hard for me to relax and do something that wasn't productive, I think.
Nicole.
Yeah, so I do have a day job. I work at The Conversation, which is doing some awesome coverage both of COVID and of the Black Lives Matter protests that you should totally check out. But I think I'm of two minds because on the one hand, this job and my superiors have been really awesome about, been really supportive of my writing outside of work and have been really, great about people taking time off during COVID for mental health reasons. And on the other hand, working from home, now I think I've kind of had to reevaluate that whole work-life balance, because there really is no work-life balance. You're working, I'm currently working most of the time from either my kitchen, my living room, or my bed, which is not super conducive to kind of splitting that. And so I think I have a harder time now kind of trying to figure out when and where writing fits into that. So it's an ongoing process, but that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Catherine. What about you?
So my pay the bills job is I do some freelance editing on the side. So I have one major client who sends me books to edit for their publisher. And so, I'm not going anywhere, and my workload is fairly small. So it doesn't have a huge impact on me right now, but of course, every time I get one of their books, I enjoy editing, of course, but I'm always thinking I could be working on my books. I could be working on the ones I'm going to publish, but it doesn't really have a big impact on what I can do, especially in terms of mental health.
We have some audience questions. What kind of issues do you encounter with executive function, and what is your best tip and trick to keep your executive function functioning? Let's start with Nicole.
Could you explain, I guess, what exactly? I'm not entirely. Words are hard. I don't entirely understand what this person means by like executive function specifically.
So executive function is sort of like, how to explain the executive function?
I think it's kind of like when you have to do something, and you just can't make yourself do it.
It's between the knowing and the doing.
Yeah, it's the control panel, essentially. It's the motion from I need to get out of bed to getting out of bed.
Cool. I was really hoping you would call on someone else first, so I didn't have to ask, but thank you guys for explaining.
What we're here for.
Yeah, I think my best way of coping with that is to do something else. If I just feel like a really huge block with writing or a really huge block with editing, then I'll work on a different project. And that might not work for everyone, but that's kind of how I get over that. And then, when, like 3 days later, I'll be like, okay, I feel like I'm finally ready again, or that block is kind of moved aside.
Catherine, what about you?
I think kind of as a result of a lifetime of internalizing that failure of executive function equals procrastination has kind of gotten me in a mindset that, when I have to do something, it's time to get up and do it, or I'm just wasting time. And I remember actually seeing a meme a couple of years ago that really resonated with me. It was the truth duck. What is it? The mallard duck that speaks the truth. You know the one I mean. And it was just that meme, and it was captioned, "If it'll only take 5 minutes, do it now." And that was just a very simple thing that resonated with me. And I've kind of stuck to that. That said, particularly in the last couple months since lockdown began, I have had some days when I just, all I can do is lie on the floor. And sometimes I find I just have to let everything go. If it's that bad, I just need to take some time, listen to some music, maybe try some meditation, something. But sometimes you just have to devote yourself to self-care.
Yeah, executive dysfunction is my middle name. I love that executive and they got to get fired because they're not doing their job. So from sort of the combo, the double whammy of ADHD and CPTSD, I've had a lot of executive dysfunction for most of my life and have only really learned about how I can manage it as an adult in recent years. And I have a few positive and a few very maladaptive ways of handling it. In terms of the positive ones, I am incredibly privileged in the fact that I live with a partner who is caring and supportive and keeps me on track. And when I'm wandering my house like an NPC, just turning on lights and keeping cabinet doors open and not finishing, they'll sort of follow behind me like, what? And that usually helps to be like, oh, I'm in a loop. But I found the way that mine manifests a lot is um, doom scrolling. I'll just go and there'll be days. I used to have these a lot more where I'd be on Twitter and I'd be scrolling and I'd be crying, going, close the phone, close the phone, close the phone, close the phone. And I couldn't. And a lot of time I find when I'm looping, I will out loud say, like, this is a loop. You're stuck right now. You can get up. And sometimes just hearing those words, like, kicks me going. Along with that, I'm gonna show, this is my journal. I sort of started, well, I don't, it's got all sorts of stuff in here, but one thing on this side is my weather. And at the start of every day, I don't know if this is true of everybody, but I usually know exactly what kind of day it's gonna be within the first hour of waking up. I know my energy levels, I know what I feel capable of, and I draw a little symbol that tells me, is it a really bright day where I feel good? Is it kind of an overcast one where my energy's lower, but I'm feeling functional? Am I storming? Am I windy? Like when I love windy, well, I hate windy days, but I love conceptualizing it that way. Cause I'm like, there's just something moving in my heart and I'm not going to be able to focus. I'm either going to be hyper focused or I'm going to be bouncing off the walls. And the second I do that, I go, okay, now I can allocate my tasks. Because if I'm in a day where I know from waking up I have no energy, yeah, I'm not going to be swallowing frogs today. Like today, I'm going to maybe practice my French. Maybe I'll clean because cleaning around me sometimes makes me feel like I can think better. Versus days when there's sun, I'm like, it's time to make stressful government calls. Like I sort of go for it. So I find monitoring energy levels is important. Also, everything works differently for everyone. So I don't want to advocate any specific thing in particular, but talking to my doctor and getting on medication this past year really helped me. I avoided it for years after having a lot of medical trauma as a child around medication. And I'm very fortunate that I have an incredible doctor who listened and was patient and helped me and research things. And that's been tremendous and life-saving. But a lot of it has been little strategies, having the journal where I track it. And most of all, just being compassionate with myself. Like when it happens and I'm like, my executive function isn't working. If you yell at the executive, they just get under the desk. Like they don't do their work anymore. So I think it's a matter of just radically accepting this is going to happen and kind of working with it. Sorry, I've been rambling for a while. I'm very passionate about this.
It's totally fine. What advice can you give for querying agents and publishers, especially for those just starting out, especially on how to recover and recoup from rejections? Does someone want to go first? All right, Nicole, thank you.
I also struggle with agent rejections. I got one the other day that was, difficult specifically because they said they really liked the material. Basically, they would like to take it, except that they already have something very similar, which was hard for me because there's nothing I can really do to change it. Or to change that, it's not something that I'm doing wrong. It's something that is already, it's in the room, and I can't do anything to fix that. And I think that kind of going along those lines is that, it helps me to trade work with other writers and to have someone look over my material and tell me what there is to fix, and have someone say, I like this part, this is good, here's what I think it's missing. And I think that helps me with agent rejections because I know that it can get better from there. Which, also maybe hearing that your work has problems isn't great for a lot of people, but that's the thing that works for me.
Avi?
Yeah, this is something that I don't have as much familiarity with because I'm planning on doing more querying with agents for the first time, hopefully next year, once I have a new manuscript kind of worked on. But in terms of, I mean, I've submitted short stories and stuff. I'm a little bit more, I feel like I can speak to a little bit more. I think a huge part of this came from having an acting background, where getting rejected is just like part of it, and it is personal. Like, it's no longer about your work, it's about you. It's not always, but no, I think a huge part is being hyper aware of the fact that, like, this is a job based in rejection, and celebrating them. When I got my first rejection, I jumped around and I threw a party and I ate some food and got excited. And when I got rejected, that means I submitted something. And I think treating every rejection as a different kind of acceptance is a really good way to kind of get yourself excited. Like, if you have a list of both of these, that means that's how many places or how many people you've submitted to. And that's more than most people will ever do in their lifetime.
So, I mean, as a publisher who has also published my own works, I obviously don't have as much experience with rejection, but I have had experience with bad reviews, which is similar, and you just gotta let it go. You can't dwell on it. People are going to not like your work, or like Nicole said, it may be not a fit for completely unrelated reasons. But yeah, like Avi said, it's a part of the job. And if you can't handle the fact that you're going to get rejections, it's going to make it a whole lot harder to get in, because it is part of being a writer.
Could I bounce off of that, if that's all right? I think when it comes to, especially things like reviews and rejections, speaking of executive function, there that thought went. One moment, loading, is it gonna come back? We're gonna see, we are live. Just kidding, it's gone forever. Thank you so much.
I know that many writers struggle with imposter syndrome and insecurities about their work. How do you find this interacts with your mental health and trying to promote your work?
So I read a story a little while ago about a man who had terrible imposter syndrome, and his name was Neil, and he was in this room full of all these very high class, CEOs, government officials types, and he was feeling very overwhelmed, out of his element, big time imposter syndrome. And he ended up talking with another man named Neil, who was also being recognized at this event. And I have a feeling you know where this is going. And the second Neil said, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I just went where they told me to go. And that was, of course, Neil Armstrong, who it was Neil Gaiman who was speaking to him. So obviously, people of incredible accomplishments struggle with imposter syndrome. And this is definitely something that I struggled with, certainly earlier in my writing and publishing career. And one thing that I've had to learn how to get myself out there, how to be confident, or at least act confident. And I've done a whole lot of conventions, and of course, anyone who's sold at a convention knows that books don't move themselves. You have to engage passersby in your books. And one thing I would say is you're not a salesperson, you are a receptionist. So the salesperson is just trying to, get whatever sales you want. That's not what you want here. You are the public face of your company, and the company may be just you. But if it helps, you can look at yourself as the public face of your company. You have to, be presentable. You have to be friendly and approachable, and you're there to help people find what they're looking for, which is more what you're looking for in selling a book, because it's not going to do much good if you sell a book to the wrong person. Books are art. It's like trying to sell a famous cubist painting to someone who only likes classical, Renaissance paintings. It's not going to help anyone. So if you think of it that way, I think it helps to give you that kind of separation, which can help push that imposter syndrome to the back of your head.
Thank you. Did someone else want to venture an answer? Avi, yes?
Yes, and the thought returned to my brain. Thank you. It's back. It just needed a moment. So it's all sort of connected, I promise. When it comes to, Catherine, you were mentioning, being the receptionist and finding who your book is for, linking back to reviews and responses, I think one of the most empowering things you can have in publishing is identifying who your audience is and identifying who likes your book. And bad reviews are incredibly sexy. They tell you better than any good review who this book is for or not for. So when you're getting negative feedback, you go, okay, this book wasn't for you. That means it's a good book. Because if it's for everybody, there's nothing in it. Like, it's not happening. So that was the prior thought, this thought now. When it comes to imposter syndrome, I struggle with it every day. I think everybody does. I wish I had better advice for how to make it easier. But a wonderful author, Rebecca Diem, had, I think, mentioned a meme to me that she saw that I love that was saying, you feel like an imposter? Good. You are one. You've tricked them, you fake creature, you. None of them will know. Go fool them all. And owning it and being like, okay, so let's accept the idea that you don't belong here as truth. If it's too hard to say that's a lie, go, it's true. And they'll never catch me. And sometimes just riding that chaotic energy helps a little bit.
So much fun. And I go home and immediately think, I hate people, I'm going to go to bed. And you just have to have that balance, and it kind of depends on your personality. Obviously, extroverts are going to have an easier time with that, but I'd say, especially for doing like online marketing and stuff that's not devoted to a certain time frame, such as a convention, just devote a specific period of time to it. Like, I'm going to spend this 1 hour per day working on marketing. So then you have your goal for what you want to do, as well as a stopping point, and you can just relax and let it go for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think for the introverts, as I am a shy introvert with anxiety, it's a great combination. I can't function when I'm talking to strangers. I have a really hard time just going up to someone and being like, "Hey, your panel was really cool. This is what I do. Maybe we can connect." So one of the things I did at one of the last conferences I went to, it was in Montana. It was the Montana Book Festival, and it was really great. And there were a lot of really great people there. And I was still having a really hard time approaching people. So what I did after was, emailed them, whether, I found their email online or through their website or whatever it was, and said, hey, I was at your panel. I didn't get a chance to talk to you after. Here are the things I really enjoyed about your panel. This is what I do, and ended up making some really great connections that way. So while it's great to go up to people in person, there is an introvert cheat for people with anxiety, or there's a way to do that without making yourself crazy.
Yeah, this is so funny because, like, Catherine, you said you're an ambivert. Nicole said you're an introvert. I am like, I found out recently that I'm an extrovert. I'm just so anxious. So I'm like, I'm just very intense and then like panic about it for days. Like that's just sort of how it goes. So I find cons are very fun for me because I get to run around and I'm kind of like a puppy. I'm like, a new friend, a new friend, a new friend. So people say, are you networking? And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I'm making friends. And now we know about each other's books. Like I just get I love meeting people. I love just the idea of being able to like enter a room where everyone has one of my special interests. So I don't need to think of something to talk about is like dreamy. So I love cons for that reason, because there is at least one communication point and I don't have to get anxious about certain social things until after the con is over and I'm lying in the hotel, like wheezing gently, looking at my wife, like, why do I say words? So I think when it comes to con things, I can be kind of a rough person to answer that. But I think if you are someone who's very energetic, but you're afraid of, you know, how am I coming off? How do I like network versus making friends? I think so many things that's important to know is when you are writing, it doesn't matter that everyone around you is trying to sell. You are in a community. And if you come in and the only thing you want to say is buy my book, and you don't know anything about any of the other books there or any of the other authors, if you don't ask your booth mate's name, that's kind of a problem. And it's something to consider that when you come in, yes, we all want to sell our work. We all want to have, you know, our hearts shared, but everyone here wants that. And I think if you just go in and think of it as an opportunity to like learn a lot of cool stuff with a lot of really cool people, you can make genuine connections that sometimes lead to networking things, but it's very weird, but I think a lot of the key to doing networking events is to stop thinking about networking and you'll never come across as ingenuine.
I'm back. I lost my internet for a brief moment and it came back. I'm glad to see you all didn't go away. I lost a lot of the questions in the Q&A box though, so I apologize about that. There was one that I remember because it was the next one, and I'll take the next two as well. So this one concerned own voice representation of mental illness. I don't want to get too much into that, but I do want to say that we have a panel on disabled literature happening this weekend. So if you're interested in that aspect of it, I really recommend that you attend it. I will post a link to it. Now, question, do you find that your mental health journey pushed you to write a certain genre?
For sure. I think that I focus a lot on mental health I think I focus a lot on you know, realistic fiction and mental health journeys, because it's something that it's both something I'm familiar with and something that I haven't seen a lot in work. You know, while I see a lot of myself in work as a white person, as you know, like list of stuff. I don't see a lot of people with OCD in work, or a lot of people with anxiety in work, etc. So that's definitely something I've been pushed to do, I think.
What about you, Avi? I saw you go, ooh.
Oh, I'm just very reactive. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's funny. I think that not necessarily the genre that I write in, but I think the themes around which I write are very based sort of my own mental health journeys. If I'm reading something with like very poor representation, for example, I'm not going to want to read it. So when I write, I try to be really mindful of impact on people and the idea of like, all right, this event has happened. What does that do? How does that, like when it comes to trauma things, how does that make people respond? Does every character need to be super confident in what they're doing? Also, does every character need to have the self-doubt, but with just a little bit of magic, they can do it? Like, I'm sorry, maybe Vyvanse helped me organize my cabinet, but it didn't make me a 9-to-5er. I still can't do it, frustratingly enough. But no, I think very much living with what I've lived with has impacted the themes that I write around. Even if I'm not directly writing about mental health, I'm constantly thinking about my characters and how they're engaging with the world and how the world might be engaging back, and how to do that in a way that's kind of hope punk and that invites the idea that, you know, people like me aren't, you know, a mistake, and that, you know, like I'm so busted and I'm so perfect, and that's something that's allowed to be seen.
Catherine, did you have
I mean, I write fantasy and science fiction, and it's what I like to read, mainly because I think it's more interesting to go to different worlds. That said, sci-fi and fantasy are also an excellent canvas for exploring all sorts of emotional issues and, getting through that stuff in fiction and characters that we can relate to, while also telling a fascinating story that may involve slaying dragons or, flying off to the far reaches of space. And why not both?
Awesome. One last question, and it goes back to the cons. One of the challenges in cons for those of us with sensory processing issues is managing the overload. I plan bolt hole times. Do any of you manage this and have interesting ways to manage? Yes, Avi.
Wow, sorry, I'm really excited that you asked that, because midway through like screeching about how energized I get by cons, I forgot to mention that would be also the most overstimulating thing in the world. Anxious, extrovert, neurodivergent. I go so fast at cons and get so excited that I usually end up nonverbal by the end of each day. A lot of it is bringing comforting tools with me. I always have something in my hand to work with, so I have grounding tools. When I feel like adding 14 extra pounds to my suitcase, I'll bring my weighted blanket. But a lot of things is preparing in advance with having a lot of very sensory soothing things and identifying a place early on that I can go to calm down. This past October at CanCon, they had a quiet room that made it so that for a couple of the nights, I actually didn't have a sensory breakdown. So I'd say having your stimming tools and having sensory tools is a really good way to handle the overwhelm. Also, earplugs.
This is definitely something that I've seen on the rise in conventions. I know that Gen Con in Indianapolis has had quiet rooms for a few years, which is definitely important at a con with 65,000 people. And this is something that I honestly probably need to have more experience in dealing with, because I do find that by a certain point of the day, I just start getting, and maybe it is overstimulation, I just start getting frustrated. And a nice comment from Talia in the chat there. And yeah, I just get a little overwhelmed at everything that's going around. And I appreciate the tips that you provided, Avi. I think that's something I'm going to have to make use of the next time we can get out of the house and actually hang together.
I think there are little things I do. I keep saying I think before every sentence, and I know I've trained myself to do that because I don't trust what I'm going to say. I know that something I do is, I'll do little things while I'm at panels, like, try to sit in the back close to the door so I don't have to interact with people on the way out. But also just, doing conventions and going to these types of programs. I'll get so excited about all the panels and all the things that are going on that I'll schedule, like 3 full days of stuff to do, and then realize halfway through the first day that that's not sustainable. So plan for yourself to take breaks. Even if there's a panel you really want to go to, if you go to that one, if it means, you'll be decommissioned for the next 2 days, maybe, go take a walk instead. That's one of the things that I've learned from my very short time going to author panels.
Awesome. We're just about out of time. I know that there are a few questions that got lost in the wash when I lost my internet. If you want to continue the discussion, you can join us in the Discord, which I'm posting in the chat right now. I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists. This was a great discussion. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your con.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.